What's up, guys? Welcome back to Newswave. Nintendo is working to set up the next few months when it comes to their release schedule, announcing another game coming up here in the summertime. And yes, variable pricing was in effect here, but in this case actually worked in the consumer's favor, but we'll go over all of that here today. Also, we are going to be talking about the PlayStation 5 as that official price increase is now in effect, and we are starting to see the effects on the marketplace, which is going about how you'd expect. And this year we do have a new Castlevania game to look forward to coming from Konami, and we just got a new trailer and gameplay for it with some details. We'll go over all of that and more. Guys, if you enjoy these videos, make sure you hit that like button, helps out a ton. And if you're new here to the Spawnwave channel, make sure you subscribe down below. And of course, members for the channel do get Newswave early. If you would like to learn more about that, click the join button or link in the description down below. And we're gonna start today with just a surprise release onto mobile devices, specifically though on iOS, and that's a Borderlands mobile game. People are looking at this and going, oh, it actually even has more content than Borderlands 4. So this was an odd one because it also doesn't seem to have a name yet. And well, now we have some confirmation here because this is just kind of happening and people are noticing. But we have Forbes and Paul Tassi actually getting a response from 2K. And we can see this over on their website, saying, quote, "We are always exploring ways to introduce Borderlands to new audiences. Zynga's Natural Motion Studio is currently conducting a limited time test for an untitled Borderlands mobile project, with Gearbox providing creative guidance on the franchise's design, history, and lore. We hope that players enjoy this new Borderlands experience and look forward to their feedback." There was some gameplay footage I saw going around as, again, people were kind of finding this game and then just recording it and checking it out, and it looks like Borderlands. People are saying it's kind of similar, I guess, in like to Borderlands 3, but still, look, mobile phones have come a long way, and obviously now seeing something like Borderlands playable is, it's kind of cool, it's interesting, but I mean, if you had a chance to play it, let me know down in the comments if it really is just like, hey, here's Borderlands just for mobile phones. Also, we did get some new NES games going into the NSO service. This we can see over on Nintendo's X account, saying 3 classic games are now available to play for Nintendo Switch Online members, all 3 of these being NES, original Nintendo games. Let's see, we have Pac-Man, Mendel Palace, and the Tower of Druaga. So I'm familiar with Pac-Man. The other 2 I have not played. So there you go. I mean, they have a whole trailer set up where they just show cuts of gameplay from each one. Pac-Man, again, is a classic, so not much explanation needed there, and that's probably the one out of the 3 that I would be firing up and checking out. It's nothing too exciting, but at least it's good to see some games getting added for that $20 per year tier, because naturally Nintendo's focus, especially recently, has been on the more expensive $50 per year expansion pack tier. So there you go, more NES games to check out on NSO. Oh, and it seems like things are still moving behind the scenes when it comes to different Game Pass tiers, as we've talked about a few things that are being spotted now, though. Another tier we can see, and this was mentioned on X from Red PHX, saying games in the Triton program will be included in the Duet subscription. Now, the Triton program seems to be all like Microsoft published first-party games that are in an Xbox Game Pass subscription tier. Duet, as being guessed, would be the Xbox Studio games plus Netflix. And we've already seen that, like, the CEO at Netflix, one of the co-CEOs, did talk about the idea of, oh, Asha Sharma is exploring different ways to add more value. And one of those would be, hey, you subscribe to one, you also get the other. And if you have Netflix, all of a sudden, if Xbox Studio games, which they do have more control of versus third-party games, of course, when it comes to distribution, let's say you're on Netflix and it's like, hey, sync up a controller, and all of a sudden you can stream some of these different Xbox Studio games through xCloud. I mean, you can see some value there on the Netflix side. I guess if they also say, hey, if you have Xbox Game Pass, you also have Netflix, sure, I can see that. But Netflix is getting quite expensive now, so I'm not really sure what that tier would cost, but just based on that alone, I assume it would be more expensive than what we have now for Ultimate, but who knows? I mean, maybe Microsoft just says, you know what, we'll take the hit on this one, and we'll just have some sort of value added on with Netflix and Game Pass. And guys, with some of the quick news out of the way, let's get into the bigger stuff. Let's start right away with Nintendo working to set up the next few months for 2026, as we do kind of expect them to have a direct by June. It's been a long time. It's been months and months now since they had their last like big direct. I think it's been more than 6 months at this point. So people are now saying, okay, June makes sense, that E3, not E3 time period where usually you have all kinds of events setting up the rest of the year and then starting off 2027 then. But Nintendo has been doing their their Twitter X or X Directs, where they just have different announcements and trailers that they release and release dates. And in fact, they've done that here again, which we can see on their account, where they say, did you catch all that? Rhythm Heaven Groove comes to Nintendo Switch on July 2nd. And here's the thing, all right? So they now have a game there starting out July, right? 2 days in. But then you look at the pricing for it. There is a physical or digital. It's $40. I mean, that seems pretty fair. Look, I'm not the big Rhythm Heaven person, but I do recognize it's very popular. When they just put this out again on their X account, it had more than 3 million views. But over on the Japan side, this went crazy. It's like 15 million views or something, 100,000 some odd likes. People are going crazy there in Japan, at least on social media, around Rhythm Heaven. So I mean, for Nintendo, they're probably pretty thrilled, of course. We know how they are in Japan. They typically have that market on lockdown at this point, with not only the Switch, but obviously now the Switch 2. And this game will be coming out on the Switch 1, of course, playable backwards compatibility-wise on the Switch 2. So a large install base to sell this game to. And look, $40, yeah, I think that's fair. I mean, we typically expect now more than ever with a lot of these companies for them to test the higher end. Hey, $40 physical? It's like, yeah, okay, great. And it's all in the cartridge because they switch one game. Good news there. Okay, so now we have Nintendo setting up the next few months, and I think there is one wild card that hasn't necessarily been mentioned here just yet in terms of where it's going to slot in. So Tomodachi Life Living the Dream, that'll be out next week on April 16th. And then following up that for a May release, we of course have Yoshi and the Mysterious Book. That's May 21st. Then we now know Rhythm Heaven. That's July 2nd. We do need release dates for Fire Emblem, The Duskbloods, and Splatoon Raiders. I assume Fire Emblem is probably going to close out the summer, so I'm thinking that might be August, maybe early September release for Fire Emblem, all right? But then there's one wild card that's floating around out there, maybe in space. That's Star Fox. So we should see Star Fox get announced, I think, in the next 2 weeks. And get this, I think it's coming out in June. So, okay, April, May, June, July. They have those 4 months locked down. By June, again, we would expect Nintendo to have some kind of direct, and they'll work to set up the second half of 2026. But that's actually pretty good so far. I mean, especially if they really do close out with something like, I don't know, Ocarina of Time Remake as their big like holiday release. Some have also talked about the idea of GTA 6 appearing on the Switch too. That would be pretty massive, but I don't necessarily know if I would count on that right now. But Ocarina of Time Remake, it's a remake of like one of the greatest games of all time by most people's standards and their opinions on it. So remaking that, while it's a big risk, could also be a massive payoff. And then you have that, Fire Emblem, Star Fox. There's a lot of stuff hitting this year for Nintendo, provided all this works out. And then you throw FromSoft in the mix with the Duskbloods. Now they're starting to wind all this up, and I think are setting up for a pretty good year for Nintendo. But just the latest game being dated here, that being Rhythm Heaven, coming out July 2nd. Next up, let's talk about the Famitsu sales charts. This, of course, tracks sales physically in Japan week to week, and this will cover last week, which did see that price increase for the PlayStation 5 go into effect. And I was very curious to see how this would change things when it comes to sales, since they're pretty transparent about this. So if there is a drop off for specifically the PlayStation 5 Pro, and then the physical the disc based, I should say, for physical media, PlayStation 5, those are the ones that are seeing the price increase. Remember, yes, there is a PS5 digital there, and while the pricing can fluctuate on that, it's specific to that region, so it's going to be cheaper to get that version, but understanding that it is region locked. So let's take a look. This is over on Install Base Forum, where they have this all listed here in a nice, neat fashion with Pokemon Pocopia still at the top. It's been at the top for basically since it came out, all right? And it still moved 45,484 units. It seems to have leveled off here. Like it was only down 7% from last week, and it is quickly rising to that 1 million mark physically in Japan. So pretty impressive stuff there, but also kind of what you'd expect from the Pokemon franchise. Still though, I mean, for a Mega Force, and that's good stuff. Then we have Mario Kart World right below that. Minecraft, that's on the Switch. Mega Man Star Force Legacy Collection on the Switch, Animal Crossing New Horizons, Monster Hunter Stories 3 on the Switch 2, Super Mario Bros. Wonder, that's the Switch 2 edition. We have Pokemon Fire Red, Leaf Green. Those are like download cards, so we still don't really have an indication as to how well that's sold overall. Maybe Nintendo will tell us. I'm not sure. It's that's kind of a weird release because it's like an eShop specific release. Maybe they'll give us numbers. Then we have Crimson Desert on the PS5, and Animal Crossing New Horizons Switch 2 edition rounding out the top 10. Moving over to the hardware, we have the Switch 2 at the top, 59,543. That's now past 5 million systems lifetime already. That's very, very fast. Obviously, we got to get to the first week of June for it to be out for an entire calendar year, and it's already at 5 million just in Japan. Then we have the Switch right below that, 16,342, quickly running up, by the way, to the 37 million mark in Japan, which is absolute insanity. Then we have the PS5, 13,539, just edging past that 7.5 million mark. So a lot of milestones here actually popping up for these different systems. And the Xbox Series, 932 systems. Okay, so we see that PS5 number, right? 13,539. I mean, it's really obvious when you have the breakdown for which SKU of the PS5 sold here. Because you look, the PS5 digital edition, remember, the Japan-only PlayStation 5 is a digital edition. That is the cheaper one. Okay, so of that, the 13,539, 12,141 were the digital edition. The PlayStation 5 with the disc drive and the PS5 Pro, both of which saw a pretty substantial price increase, 558 for the PS5, 840 for the PS5 Pro, and those are down significantly from the previous week before the price increase. So on the PS5 base, it was 2,801 systems that then dropped all the way down to 558, and the PS5 Pro, 4,662, dropping all the way down to 840. This is basically what we were figuring. It's like you raise the price, you raise the price, you raise the price, and eventually you get to a point where, yeah, a lot of consumers just decide it's too expensive and they pass on it. Now, again, if you're in Japan, you at least have an alternative to where you can go to that PlayStation 5 digital edition in Japan that is, I think, like 65% of the current base PS5 price. Yes, it's region locked, but if you're in Japan and you're just looking for the cheapest model, it's like, yeah, whatever. I don't really need it to be region free necessarily. So if that's the case, that obviously that's what you're going to go with. But this is just more, I think, something for Sony to pay attention to outright when it comes to pricing for the next generation. That's going to be the biggest hurdle they have to figure out. It's like, how do we get the PlayStation 6 to market without it being so expensive that the marketplace just can't deal with it, and we end up coming in with a very light sale. Like, in terms of sales volume, it's very, very light because the thing starts at $800. That's where I think the PlayStation 6S maybe comes into play, and they figured out how to have a cut-down version of the PlayStation 6 that's just cheaper and probably more approachable by the general audience out there. But there we go. We can see the effect of raising the PlayStation 5 price again and again and again. Yes, eventually you have it to the point where people are just going to stop buying the system and look for alternatives like the PS5 Digital Edition Japan only, or just not even go for something like a PS5 Pro as the numbers show. Next up, let's talk about Castlevania Belmont's Curse, which is an awesome looking 2D Castlevania game that's coming out sometime this year. Still waiting on that release date, but we did have a new video that showed off gameplay you can see, and this is just titled Gameplay and Commentary Trailer. And yes, you have some of the developers talking over this gameplay, explaining some of their inspirations for the game, the setting, 1499 Paris. And this is coming way of Evil Empire and Motion Twin, who did work on Dead Cells. So they have a lot of experience kind of in this 2D action, adventure, even RPG system set up here. And I've said before, it feels like Konami's back. And I think the reason I do believe that now, it kind of feels like Konami is not getting in their own way. And they go, oh, okay, yeah, Evil Empire, Motion Twin, they know how to make these kind of games. Hey, here's Castlevania, make a 2D action exploration title like the old days, and they're doing that. I mean, man, some of the some of the gameplay they were showing off here, the visuals, it's so striking. And we're seeing it through compression on YouTube, and this game looks to me like it's going to be very, very sharp in person. The animations look awesome. The platforming looked good. The combos they were throwing together, jumping around screen, hitting a lot of these different enemies. There are some other details that they have over on PlayStation's site that they link to under the games section with like environmental hazards, a large selection of weapons and abilities. Of course, the whip, they say is satisfying whip action and the new art style. So I'm on board with this. I just need to know when it's coming out, right? The physical edition, what are we dealing with? Is there a special edition for that? Because for Castlevania fans, I feel like many of them are going to look for the premium ultra edition that maybe has some cool statue or extra bits with it. Because so far, so good from what we're seeing here. But I'll have this link down below. It's like a minute and a half maybe. But from what they show, it looks great. So I'm hoping it's coming out sooner rather than later because, again, you start to get into the second half. I don't think GTA 6 is going to necessarily mess up sales for Castlevania, but I am hoping that they find a good spot in the year if it is the second half when that holiday season kicks in and things get really, really crowded. And in our last bit of news, let's talk about No Man's Sky, as it did get a new update that, what is this game even at this point? Compared to what it was when it first came out, I see these updates and they're just free. And it's like a stupid amount of content. So take a look. Here's a list that was shared over on Sean Murray or No Man's Sky's account here. And this is the Xeno arena with creature battling or 100+ abilities, genetic experiment. This whole thing, by the way, as I was going through this, it kind of sounds like their iteration of Pokemon. Not exactly the same. Like, you're not running around like their version of Pokeballs, capturing pets. You're kind of just taming them, bringing them on board. But they do have full-on like egg mutations. You do breed creatures. They have medals and titles. They have a creature survey mode, daily challenges. And yes, you also battle these different creatures on looks like a table from the Millennium Falcon. And they just come up with so many ideas there, and they keep adding on to this game. So from when it first came out, where it was a disaster, to where it is now, where it feels like an incredible value for the money. If you get this thing on sale, my gosh, there's so much stuff they've added through these updates that it's like a never-ending game. Like, they just keep putting stuff on it. And I would have never thought, oh, yeah, No Man's Sky, eventually that's going to have its own Pokemon mode, obviously. No, that's the other fun part about these updates. You legitimately just don't know what they're going to do next. And it's really, really fun for a community that's just built up over time and is super dedicated to No Man's Sky. And I mean, it's basically available on like everything. The Switch 2 port is actually very well done. So yeah, it's an easy recommendation. But I saw this and I said, of course, Pokemon they have their Pokemon mode now in No Man's Sky. Who'd have guessed? And before we go to the comments of the day, we'll take a look at the poll that I posted up yesterday, where I ask, will Nintendo release another $80 first-party game in 2026? Okay, 80% of people are bracing for impact with an $80 price point, okay? And 20% say no. So I had to think about this with Ocarina of Time, all right? And here's the thing. We know there's the variable digital or physical pricing. We didn't see that used for Rhythm Heaven, but that is a Switch 1 game, and I guess maybe it's a little different there with the cartridge sizes versus the Switch 2. Kind of wondering about two games. So Fire Emblem is one, and the other one is Ocarina of Time Remake. Fire Emblem is what I'm thinking about because I was expecting that to be a $70 game, all right? And if they come in and say, okay, it's digitally at $70, but then it's physical, it's $80. Okay, well, technically they did introduce an $80 game there. Now, Ocarina of Time, probably the same thing. It's The Legend of Zelda. It, from what I understand, isn't like a low budget or a game that they're necessarily turning in as a one-to-one remake of, oh yeah, it's going to be kind of like that 3DS one where the models are kind of updated. And no, it does seem like this is a full-on remake for Ocarina of Time and is maybe more expensive than people are expecting. Then you go, well, what's Nintendo going to do with an IP like Zelda? Probably try to get top dollar. And if it's 70 digitally, then it's like, well, okay, yeah, it's 80 physically. So those are the scenarios that I'm looking at right now. Some people were saying maybe the Duskbloods could be 80, but I think that's something that Nintendo and FromSoft would have to figure out there. For first party though, I'm thinking Ocarina of Time, probably the most likely. And look, we still need to see that thing get announced in the first place. So I mean, we'll look towards, I guess, June for their typical direct and at least show off the game, and then maybe they'll give us pricing details. We'll see. And we'll finish up with the comments of the day, as you're seeing here. This is from TN, who says, achievements. Do people care that 5% completion is making your list look ugly? That's really sad. Well, here's the thing. I notice this a lot when the discussion for Nintendo comes up. Should Nintendo do their own form of achievements or trophies? And people will go over like a whole list of reasons as to why they shouldn't. And I honestly think, why not? Like, they should absolutely do that. I think it just makes some of the games more interesting to play through at times and give people different milestones to try to hit for their accounts that the achievements will track and roll with. And who knows, Nintendo, they like to innovate and do weird things. I would like to see more innovation on like the account level achievement side. But some of the things people bring up is, well, I don't want to play a game and have half the achievements sitting there on my account. It's just, it doesn't look great. That does actually come up, yes. So I just think in general, more customization around your account and how it looks and how it's presented. It's like, why not? Because like with achievements for Nintendo, if you don't want to pursue them, you don't have to. You'll just unlock them as you go along and play games naturally. And ladies and gentlemen, that's going to do it here for Newswave. If you enjoyed this video, guys, hit that like button. If not, hit the dislike. Leave comments down below about everything we talked about here today. If you missed yesterday's Newswave, I'll leave it up here in a card. Or maybe you wanted to check in on Marathon 1 month later. I decided to do that and go over some of my thoughts as to the position now that Bungie finds themselves in with a game that is declining quite a bit. I'll leave it right below. Thanks guys for watching, and I'll see you next time.